In this video, we're going to highlight some of the features of our product EZSprite version 1.0. EZSprite is a sprite or 2D animation engine that integrates itself into your Power Basic applications. How does it do this? The way it does it is it embeds itself into any graphic control that you use in your Power Basic application. You can use the PB graphic control, you can use a static image control, or any static image control that can be subclassed. EZSprite will subclass those controls, and then it'll embed itself, and your graphic control provides the background, while EZSprite provides the foreground. And in the foreground, you can have animated 2D sprites. Well, let's take a look at a sample application using EZSprite 1.0. Here we have a simple application that's bouncing some sprites around. We have 32 sprites that are 140 by 140 pixels in size, good size sprites. And you notice we get a pretty decent animation speed here, even though we're basically running on a very simple computer. EZSprite can take these sprite images, which are basically bitmap images, and you define a transparent color, so it only shows the pixels that you want to be displayed. And these sprites can have multiple frames. You can do frame animation, you can move and hide the sprites, you can flip them up and down or vertically and horizontally, and you can do a variety of other things with the sprites. Now, sprites can be assigned to individual controls so that each control can have its own sprites. Well, let's look at these sprites here for a moment. We have these sprites moving around here. Let's see what it looks like when we alpha blend them. Now, in alpha blending, the sprites are alpha blended to the background as well as to each other. You don't have to alpha blend all the sprites. Each individual sprite can have its own alpha blending value. Sprites can also be anti-aliased around their edges. It gives a little bit cleaner look in relationship to each other in the background. Let's turn the alpha blending off. Sprites can be flipped. You can flip them vertically or horizontally. And so we'll do a little flipping here where each time the sprite is flipped. And so that's another way of animating the sprites and getting more images out of a single sprite image. Another nice feature of sprites is they can have frame animation. Each sprite can have multiple frames, as many as you like, 10, 20, 30, whatever you need. And you can flip between frames and in this way animate the sprite as if it was a moving object of some kind. We'll do that here. We'll create a simple sprite. We'll change it. We're going to slow down the speed just a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. And here is a simple sprite that's got 2 frames. One, you can see it's got a little flame, and the next frame it doesn't have the flame. And so we can see that the sprite is being animated. Well, this allows us to do some really nice 2D animation in your applications. And we'll alpha blend that for a second. You can see they can alpha blend too, even with the frames. And I'll turn the alpha blending off. Now remember, the background is not dependent upon the sprites, or the sprites dependent upon the background. They're treated separately. So you can redraw your background at any time. For example, here we can change the background while the sprites are still moving around. And it does it seamlessly and cleanly. And so this allows you to do even more with your animation. Sprites can be cloned. We're going to delete a few clones. You can create one image and then only have to store the one image and then clone the sprites. And I can start deleting a few sprites here, so we have a few less sprites. They should start moving a little bit faster. And so we can see that we can do a variety of animations with the EZSprite engine. Let's take a look at the code that is needed to write an application using EZSprite. Well, here we'll take a look at the code. We're going to change this one line of code here. EZSprite version 2 is not available yet, but we've made an update in service pack, or an update pack for EZSprite version 1, and we've added the ability to have an SLL, or static link library. So if you have PowerBasic 10, you can embed this library right into your application and no DLL has to be distributed. If you use the new SLL version, there are two unique commands only to the static link library that must be used. First is EZBegin_Sprite ENG to begin the sprite engine and get it started, initialize it. Usually you would put that in PB_main or WinMain of your application. And then after your message loop and when your application is about to terminate, you have to call EZEndsprite ENG or EndSprite engine. And those two commands are just unique to the static link library. You do not use these commands with the DLL. But if you're using PowerBasic 8 or 9 or PowerBasic Classic, you can use the DLL version as well. So you're not limited to just the static link library. Well, how we write an application using EZSprite? Well, we're going to go down after we've created a form and some controls. Here we have a routine called make sprites, and in this we call the EZSprite engine. The first call that has to be made, and it is only called once, is EZINIT or initialize sprite buffers, and we define how many sprites our application is going to have, the maximum number. You can actually free up a sprite and reuse it again and so forth, so you're not limited in that way. But this is the maximum number of sprites that our application can handle. We can also define the maximum size of the background sprite buffer by using -1, -1. The background buffer that's used by the sprite engine is the size of the desktop. And then the last parameter is basically a constant or a string that will define your registration code, which you'll get when you purchase EZSprite. Well, once you do that, the sprite engine is initialized. You can use a PowerBasic command or a Windows API to load a graphic image and a bitmap. And if you have a bitmap that has multiple frames, you basically put the images side by side from left to right in your bitmap for multiple framed sprites. Well, all I need to initialize that graphic control to use EZSprite is to get its window handle. And we use the control handle command. And then all we do is pass it to a command EZAttachSprites right here. And we pass the window handle, and in that way the sprite engine takes control of that graphic control. And now it has sprite capabilities. Now you can use any of the sprite commands to create, move, and animate sprites. Here we can define a sprite using the EZDEF or define sprite by pick or picture command, and we give it a name, pass it a bitmap handle, and some other parameters such as the anti-aliasing and so forth, and we can create a sprite, or we can clone an existing one. Now in EZSprite, sprites are given names rather than numbers or indexes, and these names makes it very easy to code your application because it makes it much easier to remember what each sprite is by their name. And names can be anywhere from 1 to 8 alphanumeric characters. We can assign sprites to a particular control with EZAssignSprites command, and we can even set the specific effects, which is basically their alpha blending, and we can do that using EZSetSprite effects. Now here's a routine that in my application is basically called within the message loop, so it continues to have updating the animation. You can basically update your sprites any way you want. You don't have to do it in the message loop of your application. You can do it through a timer or whatever mechanism you'd like to use. We'll look at some of the commands that this code uses here. For example, we have a command EZMoveSprites, and we pass the name of the sprite, and we can pass parameters about its location on the screen and so forth. EZShowSprites, we can show and hide the sprites using that command there. And then here's some commands here. EZSetSprites effect again, EZMoveSprites. Now here EZSetSprites flip allows you to flip the sprite. You can flip it horizontally and vertically. So you have basically 4 different possibilities there. And then lastly, Easy Update Client. And basically all this does is tell the control that it needs to be repainted, and it'll execute the next WM Paint repaint, and that's where EasyGUI does its amazing ability to embed the sprites with your background image. That's our code. There's not much to it. The rest of it uses basic graphic commands that are built into the Power Basic compiler. Here's, for example, the code that I wrote to draw the background screen and load in a bitmap from a file, and just that way I can change bitmaps in the background. Very easy code to write. So there's not a lot of difficult commands to learn to use EZSprite. And EZSprite can be used for a variety of applications, such as not only games and animation, but it can be used for even business applications to provide animation for a variety of needs. Well, I think you'll enjoy using EZSprite, so please take a look at EZSprite. And now we have, as was mentioned, the new SLL or static library support.